Hi guys! Tonight we're heading somewhere cold. So cold that your eyelashes would freeze together before you even blinked. You're standing on the deck of a medieval pirate ship, the boards slick with frost, the sea around you dark as spilled ink. The wind cuts through your coat like a knife, and you wonder how anyone could sleep out here, let alone dream. But they did, and tonight you're going to find out how. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights and let's step into the story. You trudge across the frozen deck, each footstep giving off a small, sharp crunch. It's long past midnight, and the sea is gone strangely still. The kind of silence that only happens when even the wind is given up. The sails above hang like ghostly sheets, stiff with ice, creaking when the ship shifts. There's a faint glimmer from the lantern swinging near the mast, its light distorted by the cold fog curling up from the water. Your fingers are already numb, your breath puffing white against the black sky. Somewhere below deck, a man coughs wet and deep. Another mutts a prayer to St. Elmo, patron of sailors and lightning, though you can't tell whether it's gratitude or desperation. The smell of salt and tar mixes with something sour, unwashed wool maybe, or the last of a barrel gone bad. You look up at the rigging and imagine men climbing it even in weather like this, their hands bare, their boots slick, just to adjust the frozen lines. They'd sleep where they could, if they could. Pirates didn't have luxury cabins, not the kind you see in movies. Most slept wherever there was room to lie down without being trampled. Sometimes that meant between barrels, sometimes on top of coils of rope. And when the cold came, when winter seas turned savage, it meant trying to survive in conditions that would drive most modern sailors below deck, dreaming for a hot shower. You rub your hands together, trying to feel your fingertips. The air tastes metallic, like old coins. Some nights the cold was so intense that metal buckles stuck to skin. Pirates, for all their swagger, didn't escape nature's cruelty. Ships from the 15th and 16th centuries weren't insulated. The decks leaked, the holes groaned, and the only thing standing between a man and hypothermia was a threadbare blanket and the warmth of the crew packed like sardines. Historians still argue whether pirates deliberately avoided the far north or simply had no choice when chasing trade routes. But one thing's certain, winter on a ship was merciless. The North Sea could turn to slush, the Baltic to glass. Ice formed on the rigging until it weighed down the masts. Men chipped at it with knives just to keep the sails from snapping. You pause near the bow, leaning over the rail. The sea below looks solid enough to walk on, a rolling plain of gray-blue ice shards. Somewhere beyond that horizon are ports frozen shut, fishermen stranded ashore, and the faint hope of warmth. The pirates aboard this ship didn't have that hope. Out here, the cold wasn't a visitor, it was a crew member. A fact often forgotten. Pirates weren't always from the tropics. The romantic Caribbean image came later. In medieval Europe, especially between the 13th and 16th centuries, pirates often roamed the North Atlantic, the English Channel, or the coasts of Scandinavia. They raided merchant ships from Hanseatic ports, or even the icy northern whaling routes. The term Viking had long faded, but its echoes lingered in the cold breath of men still living by plunder and sail. And here's a quirky tidbit to keep your imagination awake for a few minutes longer. Some of these pirates rubbed their hands with whale oil before sleep to trap heat under their skin. Whale oil, thick and greasy, worked like a primitive thermal layer. It smelled awful, of course, but when your bones ached from cold, vanity wasn't a concern. You can almost feel that slick residue now, mixed with salt and grime, catching what little warmth the body could produce. You step closer to a small wooden hatch leading below deck, The light spilling from it is faint and yellow, flickering like a heartbeat. Inside, the air will be different, warmer perhaps, but suffocatingly so. The men down there will be huddled in clusters, wrapped in whatever cloth they could steal or stitch. Maybe one snores through missing teeth. Another mutts a prayer to St. Elmo, patron of sailors and lightning, though you can't tell whether it's gratitude or desperation. The smell of salt and tar mixes with something sour, unwashed wool maybe, or the last of a barrel gone bad. You look up at the rigging and imagine men climbing it even in weather like this, their hands bare, their boots slick, just to adjust the frozen lines. They'd sleep where they could, if they could. Pirates didn't have luxury cabins, not the kind you see in movies. Most slept wherever there was room to lie down without being trampled. Sometimes that meant between barrels, sometimes on top of coils of rope. And when the cold came, when winter seas turned savage, it meant trying to survive in conditions that would drive most modern sailors below deck, dreaming for a hot shower. You rub your hands together, trying to feel your fingertips. The air tastes metallic, like old coins. Some nights the cold was so intense that metal buckles stuck to skin. Pirates, for all their swagger, didn't escape nature's cruelty. Ships from the 15th and 16th centuries weren't insulated. The decks leaked, the hulls groaned, and the only thing standing between a man and hypothermia was a threadbare blanket and the warmth of the crew packed like sardines. Historians still argue whether pirates deliberately avoided the far north or simply had no choice when chasing trade routes. But one thing's certain: winter on a ship was merciless. The North Sea could turn to slush, the Baltic to glass. Ice formed on the rigging until it weighed down the masts. Men chipped at it with knives just to keep the sails from snapping. You pause near the bow, leaning over the rail. The sea below looks solid enough to walk on, a rolling plain of gray-blue ice shards. Somewhere beyond that horizon are ports frozen shut, fishermen stranded ashore, and the faint hope of warmth. The pirates aboard this ship didn't have that hope. Out here, the cold wasn't a visitor, it was a crew member. A fact often forgotten: pirates weren't always from the tropics. The romantic Caribbean image came later. In medieval Europe, especially between the 13th and 16th centuries, pirates often roamed the North Atlantic, the English Channel, or the coasts of Scandinavia. They raided merchant ships from Hanseatic ports, or even the icy northern whaling routes. The term Viking had long faded, but its echoes lingered in the cold breath of men still living by plunder and sail. And here's a quirky tidbit to keep your imagination awake for a few minutes longer. Some of these pirates rubbed their hands with whale oil before sleep to trap heat under their skin. Whale oil, thick and greasy, worked like a primitive thermal layer. It smelled awful, of course, but when your bones ached from cold, vanity wasn't a concern. You can almost feel that slick residue now, mixed with salt and grime, catching what little warmth the body could produce. You step closer to a small wooden hatch leading below deck. The light spilling from it is faint and yellow, flickering like a heartbeat. Inside, the air will be different, warmer perhaps, but suffocatingly so. The men down there will be huddled in clusters, wrapped in whatever cloth they could steal or stitch. Maybe one snores through missing teeth. Another mutts a prayer to St. Elmo, patron of sailors and lightning, though you can't tell whether it's gratitude or desperation. The smell of salt and tar mixes with something sour, unwashed wool maybe, or the last of a barrel gone bad. You look up at the rigging and imagine men climbing it even in weather like this, their hands bare, their boots slick, just to adjust the frozen lines. They'd sleep where they could, if they could. Pirates didn't have luxury cabins, not the kind you see in movies. Most slept wherever there was room to lie down without being trampled. Sometimes that meant between barrels, sometimes on top of coils of rope. And when the cold came, When winter seas turned savage, it meant trying to survive in conditions that would drive most modern sailors below deck, dreaming for a hot shower. You rub your hands together, trying to feel your fingertips. The air tastes metallic, like old coins. Some nights the cold was so intense that metal buckles stuck to skin. Pirates, for all their swagger, didn't escape nature's cruelty. Ships from the 15th and 16th centuries weren't insulated. The decks leaked, the hulls groaned, and the only thing standing between a man and hypothermia was a threadbare blanket and the warmth of the crew packed like sardines. Historians still argue whether pirates deliberately avoided the far north or simply had no choice when chasing trade routes. But one thing's certain, winter on a ship was
Historians is that pirates often slept near their weapons. Cutlasses, pistols, and daggers were kept within arm's reach, even while dreaming. It was not paranoia, it was practicality. On a ship filled with thieves and killers, the line between sleep and death was thin. Some men even tied their weapons to their belts before lying down, so no one could steal them. Imagine the clinking of metal as they turned over, the dull thud of a pistol sliding against the planks. You crouch and rest a hand against the deck, feeling the faint vibration of waves beneath. There is a rhythm to it, slow and deep, like the heartbeat of something ancient. The ship talks to you through those shutters, whispering its age and its burden. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the wind, the wood, the soft murmur of life below deck. Historians still debate whether pirates preferred to sleep above deck or below during the coldest voyages. Some argue that staying below offered warmth from the bodies of other men and the ship's enclosed air. Others claimed that the lower decks were so foul, damp, and airless that men would rather risk frostbite under the stars. Both might be true. You can picture it. One man wrapped in wool below, sweating from the stench. Another curled under the open sky, shivering but breathing fresh air. The lantern light flickers again. You lean against the mast and feel its steady pulse, the wood shifting with every roll of the ship. It feels alive beneath your shoulder, like an old animal breathing in its sleep. The ropes hanging nearby knock together softly, a steady beat in the quiet night. The world has shrunk to the ship, the sea, and the sound of the cold. The horizon is gone, the stars dulled by drifting clouds. You can almost forget there is land anywhere at all. Out here, the pirates were trapped between two infinities, the frozen sky above and the endless water below. Their only real home was the fragile planks between them. You take one last slow look around. The deck is a map of frost and moonlight. Every line, every nail, every frozen puddle tells a story of human stubbornness. The men below are sleeping, if you can call it that, while their ship whispers and groans around them. And you, standing here with your breath hanging in the air, can almost feel what they felt, the uneasy peace between exhaustion and fear, the strange beauty of surviving just one more night. You climb down a short ladder toward the lower deck, where the air grows thicker and smells of tar, old wood, and bodies pressed too close for comfort. The sound of the sea fades to a muted hum, replaced by the soft sway of ropes and the groan of the hull. Down here you finally see them, the sleeping pirates, not on feather beds or in bunks like soldiers, but in narrow hammocks strung side to side, creaking as the ship moves beneath them. Your breath catches. It feels like entering a different world, a floating cave that rocks with each passing wave. Lantern light paints everything in dull gold, swinging slowly, making shadows crawl along the beams. The hammocks sway gently, each one holding a shape wrapped in rough fabric. They look peaceful, but you know better. The sea never truly lets anyone rest. A small recorded detail from early seafaring days notes that hammocks were first used not for comfort, but for safety. Sailors learned that sleeping on the deck was dangerous. One roll of the ship could throw a man into a wall or send him crashing to the floor. Hammocks changed that. Suspended by ropes, they moved with the ship, cradling the body rather than fighting against it. Pirates adopted them quickly. A man in a hammock could sleep without bruising his ribs. You step closer and touch the edge of one. The fabric is stiff with salt and cold, its fibers rough and gritty beneath your fingers. You can imagine how it felt against skin rubbed raw by sea air. A curious little detail you might not expect is that some pirates lined their hammocks with stolen sailcloth or even animal fur if they were lucky. Anything that could trap a little warmth was precious. The fabric smelled of smoke, sweat, and salt. But that mix meant survival. As you listen to the rhythm of the hammock swaying, it almost feels hypnotic. Each one creaks in a slightly different pitch, blending into a strange lullaby. The sound has weight, like time itself swinging back and forth. The ship sighs as if it shares the same exhausted rhythm. You notice a man shifting in his sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Another snorts, turns over, and the hammock spins lazily before settling again. Somewhere above, water drips through the seams of the deck, pattering into a bucket with a steady plink. A thin draft snakes down through the cracks, making the lantern flame flicker. You pull your coat tighter, but the air here clings to your skin like cold breath. It's easy to think pirates were used to hardship, but exhaustion breaks even the hardest men. Records from merchant ships of the same era mention sailors working for 18 hours or more in brutal weather, sleeping only in short bursts. Pirates were no different. Their lives depended on alertness, so rest came in fragments. 2 hours here, 3 hours there. No one ever truly slept deeply. Not when every creak could mean a leak or a knife. Experts still cannot agree on how pirates divided sleeping shifts during the harshest winters. Some argue for a strict rotation similar to naval crews, where half the men were awake while the rest slept. Others claim that pirate life was more chaotic, that men collapsed wherever they stood once exhaustion overcame them. The truth may be buried in the salt and silence of the sea itself. You glance around the cramped space. The hammocks hang so close that they touch when the ship rolls. You could reach out and brush your hand across 3 men without taking a step. In this closeness, privacy disappears. Every breath, every snore, every whispered dream becomes part of a shared existence. You realize that even here, pirates were a kind of family, bound by need more than loyalty. Imagine the air on the coldest nights, heavy with moisture, your breath clouding even indoors. The walls drip with condensation, the ropes damp to the touch. The smell of wet wool and human closeness fills the lungs. You can almost taste the salt in it. Then a sudden creak splits the quiet. The ship shifts and a few men murmur in their sleep. One opens an eye, then closes it again. These men have learned to sleep through everything. The sound of waves slapping the hull becomes background music. The rocking motion that would make you seasick now rocks them to sleep like children. Here is a surprisingly human habit from old accounts. Sailors, including pirates, often hummed softly to steady themselves before sleep. A tune might pass from one hammock to another, changing slightly each time. It was not quite music, not quite prayer, but something between the two. It kept fear at bay when storms gathered. Some nights the ship itself seemed to hum back, the wood vibrating with their low voices. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. The sway of the hammocks, the crackle of lantern light, the occasional drip of seawater. It all blurs together into a rhythm that feels eternal. This is how they survived the cold, not by conquering it, but by swaying with it, accepting it as part of their strange floating world. There is beauty in this balance. The hammocks, each one a fragile cocoon, hold lives suspended between danger and dreams. Outside, the sea is black and endless, but here, inside this narrow wooden belly, men drift half asleep, trusting that the ropes will hold and the ship will keep floating until morning. You open your eyes again and watch the shadows move. For a moment you forget the cold, the danger, the history. You just see motion and rest, life and sleep all swaying gently together under the weight of the sea. You duck lower into the ship's belly, careful not to hit your head against the low beams. The space narrows as you move forward, the air growing thicker with each step. It feels warmer here, but not in a pleasant way. The heat is stale, trapped beneath the planks, mingled with the smell of salt, smoke, and human breath. Your boots stick slightly to the damp floorboards, slick with condensation that drips from above. The dim light barely reaches the corners. A single lantern swings from a hook, its flames struggling against the drafts that slip through the seams. The glow trembles over sleeping bodies and open barrels. Every object casts a wavering shadow that seems alive. You can hear quiet snores, the rustle of crafty cloth, and the occasional clink of metal when someone...
Here's a small but curious detail from ship logs. To create warmth without open fire, crews often filled iron pots with heated stones or sand. They would seal the top with cloth and carry these makeshift heaters below deck. The warmth lasted for hours, just enough to thaw stiff fingers or melt ice on ropes. You can imagine the smell of scorched fabric mixed with the sea air. The wind howls faintly above, pressing through every crack. The lamp flickers, throwing long shadows that dance across the walls. The pirates are quiet, moving slowly. One scrapes the last bits of food from a pan. Another wipes his knife on his sleeve and mutters about the cold settling into his bones. They talk about warmth as if it were treasure. Modern researchers still cannot agree how crews managed heat during deep winter voyages. Some claim they built small, shielded braziers that burned in the open air when the sea was calm. Others believe they used sealed lanterns filled with whale oil, their faint heat multiplied by layers of wool and bodies packed close together. Whatever the truth, it was a dangerous balance. One wrong move could mean death by fire or frost. You sit beside them in the dim light. The glow from the coals breathes like a living thing. Every few seconds, one pirate leans forward with a stick to stir the ashes, coaxing more life from the heat. The room feels smaller when the warmth returns, as though the air itself softens. For a moment, everyone relaxes, shoulders dropping, eyes half closing. Then someone laughs softly, breaking the silence. He points at a dented copper kettle hanging from a hook. The handle has been wrapped with rope, and a small wooden carving dangles from it, shaped like a fish. It's a charm, a small promise that the ship will not burn. The men grin and tap it before turning back to their work. A sailor's life was full of such tokens. They carried pieces of bone, bits of shell, or carvings from driftwood, each with its own story. These were not luxuries. They were faith in solid form. When the world around you was made of ice and salt, even superstition had weight. You feel the ship tilt slightly beneath your feet. A few drops of hot water spill from a pot and hiss when they hit the cold floor. The pirates curse quietly, moving to steady the pans. One of them jokes that the ship must be jealous of the warmth. Laughter ripples again, short but genuine. It feels like a small victory, proof that spirits still burn even when fire cannot. Outside, the wind begins to rise. You can hear the sails strain and the ropes hum under tension. The sound creeps down through the wood, a reminder that the cold is always waiting, just beyond the walls. The pirates glance toward the ceiling instinctively. The sea is never far away. A fascinating account from a 14th century voyage mentions that sailors sometimes used heated cannonballs to warm their quarters. They would take one from the galley fire, roll it across the deck in a bucket of sand, and then place it in a metal box to radiate heat. The risk was immense, yet the reward was a few hours of bearable cold. It is hard to say whether pirates truly dared it, but the idea alone shows the lengths they went to for survival. You imagine that glow, faint and red, flickering across the faces of exhausted men. The light catches on scars and beards and eyes dulled by fatigue. They lean closer, chasing warmth that never lasts. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and old rum. The noise of the ship fades into the background until only the slow crackle of the coals remains. It is easy to see how the act of keeping a fire alive, however small, became something sacred. It was the ship's heartbeat, a pulse of light against the dark. A sailor would sit awake long after the others had fallen to sleep, tending that fragile heat as though guarding life itself. You lean back, listening to the faint music of the sea against the hull. Above, the wind continues to sing. The pirates stretch out, their shoulders glowing faintly in the light, their breath misting in the air. For a brief moment, the room feels almost human, almost safe. Then the lamp flickers and the cold slips back in, quiet but patient. The warmth fades quickly, leaving only the smell of ashes and salt. You can feel the change in the air, the reminder that no comfort lasts long out here. But in this fleeting moment, as the embers glow and the men's eyes grow heavy, the cold seems far away. The ship sighs again, and somewhere deep inside it, a small glowing coal keeps breathing. You climb back toward the middeck, where the light is thin and blue, a sign that the day is beginning, but the sun has not yet conquered the mist. The air feels brittle, as if it might shatter if you breathe too sharply. Above you, the rigging hums with the wind. The sails strain, and you hear the creak of wood moving in slow rhythm. It is not the sound of chaos, but of duty. The ship never sleeps, not even when the crew tries to. The rotation of the night watches dictates the rhythm of everyone's life here. Pirates, like naval crews, divided their time into shifts called watches. Some men kept guard, while others rested, and every few hours, the bell would ring to switch them. It was the only clock they truly trusted. You imagine the tone of that bell, dull and distant, cutting through dreams like a whisper from the sea itself. Historical records from early privateers describe these watch rotations as both discipline and curse. Too much rest meant danger. Too little meant madness. Pirates, never fond of order, often bent the schedule to fit their moods or needs. Some slept 2 hours at a time. Others refused sleep entirely until exhaustion forced them down. What mattered was not the number of hours, but the rhythm itself, the pulse of ship life that never stopped. You lean on the railing, feeling it cold beneath your palms. The horizon glows faintly. A few men shuffle out from below deck, eyes blurry, hair matted with frost. One yawns so hard you hear his jaw crack. Another splashes a handful of seawater on his face, gasps, and laughs at the shock of it. Their voices sound hoarse, yet alive. The next watch has begun. A fascinating note from a 16th century sailor's diary reveals that men on watch use music to keep themselves awake. Not the kind you might expect, but low humming, rhythmic stamping, or the tapping of spoons on barrels. It kept time with the rocking of the ship. You can almost hear it now, a slow murmuring percussion that floats across the deck like a heartbeat. The man at the wheel grips it tight, his fingers red and cracked. The ship tilts slightly as he adjusts the course. Beside him, another man peers into the mist, watching for shapes that could mean ice or enemy sails. They do not speak. They do not need to. Out here, silence is its own language. There is something meditative about the way they move, as if the body learns to follow the rhythm of the ocean. You begin to understand why so many sailors describe the sea as both torment and teacher. The motion seeps into the bones, and even in sleep, the body rocks as if it's still at work. It is said that men who returned to land often swayed unconsciously for days, their bodies still trying to balance on invisible waves. Not every watch is peaceful. Sometimes the darkness hides more than waves. One man glances over his shoulder, often checking shadows as if something to climb from the sea. You remember hearing that sailors once believed in creatures that followed ships, waiting for the moment a man fell overboard. The fear of being alone in the dark ocean was more terrible than battle itself. The rotation continues. The men who just finished their shift stumble below deck, their faces gray with fatigue. One rubs his chest as though trying to chase away the chill that never leaves. They will sleep now, if the noise and cold allow it, until the next bell wakes them again. Experts today still discuss how much rest pirates truly managed at sea. Some estimates suggest they slept less than 4 hours a day during long voyages. Others believe the chaos of pirate life allowed longer naps between raids, a luxury no navy could afford. The truth lies somewhere in the blur between exhaustion and necessity. You step closer to the mainmast where a lantern hangs. The flame flickers weakly, but its light spreads across the deck, illuminating the frost clinging to ropes and railings. You run your fingers along one of the ropes, feeling the stiff salt crust that forms overnight. It crunches slightly beneath your touch. Everything here is touched by the sea, even the smallest fibers. One of the pirates on watch begins to whistle softly, a slow tune that sounds more like mourning than music. The others glance his way but do not stop him. The sound drifts through the air, curling around the masts and fading into the distance. It fills the silence without breaking it. In this rhythm, the ship becomes a living organism. Each man is a cell, each watch a heartbeat. When one part fails, the rest must carry on. That understanding binds them more tightly than any code of loyalty. The ocean teaches unity through fear. A curious little tradition from some crews involved the passing of a token during watch changes. It might be a carved bead, a bittern, or a carving from driftwood, each with its own story. These were not luxuries. They were faith in solid form. When the world around you was made of ice and salt, even superstition had weight. The sky brightens slightly, a faint promise of day. The sea remains dark, though it glitters where ice floats drift by. You watch as the pirates scan the horizon, their eyes narrowed against the wind. Sleep still clings to their faces, but alertness returns, slow and steady. The bell rings again.
You first. Sweet, sharp, and earthy, a mix of molasses and smoke. Someone passes a flask along the line, taking turns without a word. The rum burns the throat, but it also blurs the cold, makes the edges of the night softer. One man sighs with relief after his drink, as if he can finally feel his heart again. Historical journals often mention that rum was both comfort and curse aboard ships of this age. The strong liquor numbed pain, quieted fear, and filled empty bellies when food ran short. But it also dulled reflexes, frayed tempers, and fueled fights that could end with blood on the planks. Pirates, unlike naval crews, had no rations to control their drinking. A cask might last a week or a night, depending on their mood and misery. You sit near the group, listening to their talk. The sound of their laughter carries easily in the still air, low and rough. Their stories wander between truth and imagination, stitched together by the rhythm of their cups. One speaks of a raid near the Canary Islands, where they drank more than they fought. Another swears he once saw frost form on a man's beard so thick it broke when he smiled. Here's an odd little truth drawn from sailors' accounts. Some crews mixed rum with seawater, both to stretch it and to avoid the shock of drinking it neat in the cold. They called it grog, a word that would later drift into naval tradition. The salt made it worse for thirst, but easier on frozen throats. You could almost taste it, sharp and briny, as if the ocean itself were in the cup. The light from the lantern catches the surface of a bottle, making it glow amber in the dark. The pirates watch it the way men on land might watch a fireplace. The rum becomes a substitute for heat, a trick for the body as much as for the mind. The wind moans softly through the rigging. One pirate begins to hum, his voice cracked and low. Others join in, the melody slow and uncertain, a lullaby stitched from exhaustion. It is not a song of victory or hope, but something older, something that belongs to the sea. You can feel it in your chest, that strange calm that comes after too much drink and too little sleep. Experts today continue to discuss whether alcohol actually helped sailors survive cold voyages. Some argue that it only gave the illusion of warmth, drawing heat from the body faster once the buzz faded. Others suggest that in small doses it offered real comfort, enough to keep despair from sinking too deep. What no one doubts is its power over morale. A warm drink, even a dangerous one, kept men alive in spirit, if not in body. You watch as one pirate wipes his mouth and grins through cracked lips. His teeth are yellow, his cheeks hollow. He taps the bottle against the mast and says, "To the cold, may it drink slower than we do." The others laugh, though it is the kind of laughter that hides something brittle underneath. The ship rolls gently, and the lantern light ripples across the deck. A few men lean back against barrels, eyes half closed. Their words blur into mumbling. Rum has a way of making time slip sideways. Minutes stretch into hours without anyone noticing. The rhythm of the sea and the buzz of alcohol melt together until even the cold feels far away. But the peace never lasts long. A shout breaks from the other end of the deck, harsh and slurred. Two men argue over a cup. The sound rises quickly, sharp against the night. One pushes the other, and the crew moves fast to pull them apart. Their hands grip shoulders, voices low, trying not to wake the rest of the ship. The fight fizzles as quickly as it began, leaving only a tense silence. A curious superstition floats among sailors' tales. It was said that spilling rum at sea angered the spirits of drowned men. The liquid belonged to them once it touched the deck. That is why some pirates, after a brawl, would pour a few drops over the side to pay the sea. You watch one of them do it now, tilting the bottle slightly and whispering into the dark water. The wind carries the smell of rum across the deck, mixing with the salt air. Somewhere below, a few men stir in their hammocks, muttering in their sleep. Maybe they are dreaming of taverns, firelight, and soft beds. Maybe they dream of warmth that never ends. You can almost see it through their eyes. A wooden table, candles dripping wax, laughter echoing without fear of frost. The bottle comes back around to you. You lift it to your lips. The taste is harsh but alive. It burns for a moment, then fades, leaving behind the strange comfort of something shared. The cold is still here, pressing at your face, creeping into your fingers, but it feels softer now, as if it has agreed to wait its turn. Above you, the sails snap once and the ship tilts gently. The rum settles in your stomach like a small ember, not enough to chase the cold away, but enough to remind you you're still here. Around you, the pirates laugh again, their voices slow and rough, and for a fleeting hour, the coldest night at sea feels almost human. The rum is gone by dawn, leaving the air thick with the smell of salt, smoke, and tired laughter. The pirates have gone quiet again, their voices fading into whispers as the cold returns. You watch them settle into their corners, pulling their blankets close, their eyelids heavy, but restless. Sleep comes differently at sea. It is not rest so much as retreat, a thin layer between exhaustion and memory. You lean against a wooden beam, feeling the ship move under you. It sways gently, like breathing. Around you, the men drift into uneasy slumber, Their faces soften, their bodies curling inward. The sound of the sea blends with their slow, uneven breathing. Somewhere above, the ropes knock softly against the mast, a rhythm that feels almost deliberate, almost kind. It is written in the letters of captured sailors that pirates often dreamed of land. They spoke of beaches, fires, and soft beds as if they were miracles. Some claimed to see gold even in their sleep, coins spilling from invisible chests, only to vanish when they reached for them. You imagine the frustration of that, the longing turned into nightmare. The colder the sea, the sweeter the dream. A curious glimpse into pirate superstition appears in an old ballad. It was said that a man who dreamed of fire during winter would not live to see spring. Flames in dreams were omens of fever, storms, or battle. The men joked about it sometimes, but you can sense that they half believed it. When warmth is a luxury, even imagined fire becomes dangerous. You watch as one man turns in his hammock, mumbling softly. His lips form the shape of a word that sounds like home. He's probably from somewhere green, somewhere with trees and smoke curling from a hearth. The others shift, grunting or sighing, tangled in their hammocks like fish caught in nets. The ship rocks and the hammocks sway in answer. It looks almost peaceful. From a historian's point of view, dreams were one of the few escapes available to sailors. Diaries from the 15th century mention recurring visions among crews who spent too long at sea. They dreamed of soundless lands, of walking on solid ground that never moved, of hearing birds instead of waves. For pirates whose lives were built on danger and constant movement, these dreams might have felt like heaven. You close your eyes for a moment and try to imagine their inner world. The smell of the ocean seeps into dreams. The motion of the ship never truly fades. Even in sleep, the sea remains. You might find yourself walking through a market, yet the ground tilts beneath your feet. You might see a face from childhood, only for it to dissolve into the shape of a wave. The mind, it seems, never lets go of the ocean once it takes hold. Experts today still discuss whether the isolation of long voyages caused shared hallucinations among sailors. Some argue that the monotony and malnutrition warped their perception of reality. Others suggest that in small doses it offered real comfort, enough to keep despair from sinking too deep. What no one doubts is its power over morale. A warm drink, even a dangerous one, kept men alive in spirit, if not in body. You watch as one pirate wipes his mouth and grins through cracked lips. His teeth are yellow, his cheeks hollow. He taps the bottle against the mast and says, "To the cold, may it drink slower than we do." The others laugh, though it is the kind of laughter that hides something brittle underneath. The ship rolls gently, and the lantern light ripples across the deck. A few men lean back against barrels, eyes half closed. Their words blur into mumbling. Rum has a way of making time slip.
Small, almost forgotten detail from a ship's log mentions that some crews encourage storytelling before sleep. It was a way to guide dreams, to shape what the mind would see. The stories were simple, sometimes about gold, sometimes about food, but they worked. Men slept better after imagining something worth surviving for. You can feel that rhythm in the room now, the murmured breathing, the creak of hammocks, the sigh of the sea. It feels ancient, almost sacred. The dreams drifting through this ship are not peaceful, but they are alive. They carry warmth that no fire can give, the warmth of memory, of something human still glowing beneath the cold. You look up, the lantern light dances across the beams, and for a fleeting moment you imagine the ship dreaming with them. Its creaks are whispers, its sway a heartbeat. Maybe even the wood remembers the warmth of the sun long gone.
and as you stand there surrounded by sleeping men and their fragile dreams, the cold outside feels less cruel. The next day begins with a dull gray light, heavy clouds hiding the horizon. The cold bites even before you open your eyes fully. The ship groans softly under your feet, every timber stiff from frost. The smell of salted meat lingers in the air, and somewhere nearby a pan clatters. It is time for the morning meal, though calling it that feels generous. You follow the sound into the galley. A few men gather around a small table, heads bowed, hands cupped around tin plates. The food looks as tired as they do. Hardtack biscuits chipped like stone, strips of salted beef that glisten with oil, and a pot of gray stew that smells faintly of brine and smoke. The air feels damp and close, filled with the aroma of boiled fat and wet wool. Old seafaring records tell us that pirates, like other sailors of their time, survived on rations meant to last months. The meat was packed in barrels of salt so strong that men often had to soak it overnight before cooking. Bread turned to rock within weeks. If a biscuit broke your tooth, no one was surprised. They called it ship's bread, though it was closer to punishment. You watch one man try to chew through a piece of beef, his jaw working slowly. He grunts, swallows, then laughs without humor. "Better than snow," he mutters. Another scoops stew into a tin cup, the liquid pale and thin. You can smell the salt from where you stand. A curious little detail from ship life reveals that some pirates used their rum to soften the hardtack. They would soak the biscuits until they crumbled, then mix them with sugar or molasses if they had any. It turned into a kind of porridge, sweet and thick, a rare comfort in the biting cold. You can almost taste it now, sweet and bitter at once, the warmth spreading just enough to remind you what comfort feels like. The cook stirs his pot with a wooden ladle, his hands red from cold. He hums softly under his breath, an old song from some port you will never see. The melody winds through the air, mingling with the clink of spoons and the creak of the ship. The pirates eat in silence, the kind born of exhaustion rather than manners. There are no fresh vegetables, no fruit, no bread that still bends. The men's lips are cracked, their faces pale. Some show the first signs of scurvy, bleeding gums, slow movements, eyes dulled with fatigue. The sea takes its toll slowly, without mercy. They chew, swallow, and stare at nothing. The act of eating feels more like survival than satisfaction. Researchers have found records of inventive cooks who tried to keep spirits up with strange recipes. Some mixed crushed biscuits with seawater and grease to make something like dumplings. Others used powdered mustard to hide the taste of rot. It was creativity born of desperation. Pirates were not chefs, but they were stubborn. Anything edible became a meal. The man beside you holds out a plate of stew and gestures for you to sit. You take it, feeling the warmth seep into your fingers through the metal. The broth tastes of salt and metal, thin but alive. You can feel it travel down your throat, warming a little piece of you the cold had forgotten. Around you, spoons scrape plates. For a few minutes, the only sound is eating. An argument begins at the far end of the table. Two men grumble over who gets the last bit of dried fruit. Their voices rise, but no one interferes. Hunger sharpens tempers more than rum ever could. Finally, the cook slams his ladle against the pot, and the noise echoes through the galley. The fight stops. The silence that follows is heavy but short-lived. The rhythm of eating resumes. Slower now, quieter. A strange fact from a 14th century travel account mentions that sailors sometimes kept small cloth bags filled with aromatic herbs or citrus peel when available. They would sniff these during meals to mask the stench of spoiled food. You picture a pirate lifting such a charm to his nose while pretending the stew in front of him tastes like roasted lamb. It is both ridiculous and deeply human. The air thickens with the smell of smoke as the last coals in the hearth fade. Someone coughs, someone else belches, then laughs. The sound ripples through the room like a spark. It reminds everyone that they are still alive, still together. Outside, the wind howls again, rattling the ship's sides. The men finish quickly, wiping their mouths on sleeves or old rags. Some save crumbs in small pouches, just in case. Others lick their fingers clean, unwilling to waste even a grain of salt. The cook begins to scrub his pot with sand and seawater, humming the same tune. Historians today still question how pirates managed morale on such meager diets. Some argue that shared meals built unity, a kind of ritual that reminded them they were not alone. Others think the monotony of food worsened discipline, feeding mutiny as much as hunger. Both ideas might be true. The galley was the ship's heart, both comfort and battlefield. You linger for a moment longer. The table is empty now, the plates stacked neatly. The smell of salted beef clings to the air. You glance around and see the faces of men hardened by necessity, their eyes dulled with fatigue, but still alert. The sea may strip away softness, but it never fully takes the will to live. As you turn to leave, the cook pours the last of the warm water into a small cup and offers it to you. His hand trembles slightly. "For luck," he says. You take it, the warmth seeping into your palms. The taste is plain, just salt and metal, but it feels sacred somehow. On this frozen ship, every bit of heat is a blessing, and every meal, no matter how poor, is a small act of defiance. The cold grows sharper as the days pass, a creeping presence that slides into every seam of the ship. The ocean itself begins to change. The water darkens until it looks like black glass, and the wind cuts with a high whining note. You pull your collar higher and watch as flakes of snow drift lazily down, settling on the deck before vanishing into tiny beads of water. The pirates move slower now. Their boots crunch on the frozen planks. They speak little, saving their breath for work. The sails hang stiff, patched with frost, and the ropes sparkle faintly in the pale light. Each line looks beautiful, like crystal threads spun across the masts, but you know that beauty hides danger. Ice adds weight, and weight breaks ships. Historical accounts of northern voyages tell of sailors forced to climb frozen rigging with knives between their teeth, hacking away at the ice before it could pull the mast down. You can almost see it now. A man halfway up the main mast, his fingers bleeding as he chips away at the glittering frost. The wind shrieks through the ropes, and the sea below looks solid enough to walk on. A strange note found in a merchant's logbook mentions that during one particularly brutal winter, sailors used iron mallets to smash the ice off their sails, singing loudly so they wouldn't notice their fingers going numb. Their laughter froze in the air before it disappeared. You imagine the sound, brittle and bright, carried away by the wind like tiny shards of glass. The pirates on this ship are not far from that fate. They move across the deck with a kind of grim rhythm, breaking ice from the ropes, scraping the frozen planks with wooden mallets. One man leans close to the mast, breathing hard, his beard stiff with frost. He wipes it away, but the crystals return within moments. The sea sprays upwards in bursts that freeze mid-air, coating everything in a thin white shell. Modern researchers have long debated whether pirates ever dared to sail this far north. Some argue that only desperate or lost crews would risk such waters, but others believe the lure of trade routes and unguarded cargo pulled them toward the edge of the world. Whatever the reason, their courage or madness brought them into places where even the sea seemed to turn against them. You grip the railing and look out. The ocean stretches flat and endless,